Hello, my name's Yorkshire Kris and this is Exotic Gardening Live. Thank you for joining me on this live stream on this quite bright Sunday evening. So I've not done a live stream like this for a couple of weeks, and the last one I did was before the clocks changed and it was 8 o'clock when I've been doing them, so it was pitch black. But now it's nice and bright, although it's a bit overcast, but it's nice and dry out there. I can see through the window. So it's nice to have a bit of daylight at this time of day. And since we last did a live stream together like this, we've had quite a lot of different types of weather. I know we always talk about the weather, but it's really important when you're growing temperamental exotic plants in the UK and in Northern Hemisphere. So we had beautiful weather not long ago, was it? Was it just last week? Week before last, we had really warm, sunny weather. Here we had over 20 degrees, I think like 20.1 degrees, and we had about 4, 5, 6 days over 15, 16 degrees. So the weather has been really nice, and everything started to grow. The soil warmed up a little bit of sun, a bit strong at this time of year, and we got banana leaves coming out, musa baju, and everything sort of stirring. And then after that we had some really cold weather. So for the last 3-4 nights we've had sort of down to freezing, and depending where you are in the UK, you might have had down to about -5, -6. We've been lucky here. We've had -0.5, I think it was, last night, I think and then the night before, I think it got down to -1.5. So we've had, you know, down to just under sub-zero. We've not had any proper harsh cold nights. We've just had, you know, just down to zero-ish, and just dipping below for a couple of sort of minutes to an hour when it got to -1.5. So that will have sort of blackened a bit of foliage on some plants. And if you had -3, -4 where you are, then you will have probably noticed, now you've had a look around the garden, some black leaves and things like Gunnera that was emerging, and sort of Musabaju if they were into leaf already. So it's to be expected at this time of year. We are in, you know, it's spring in the UK, and you know, we do get frosts all the way, depending where you live, in April and May. So it's just one of those things we've just got to live with. Obviously we can try to fleece and put straw in tree ferns and things like that at this time of year to protect the emerging foliage. But it's just, you know, you're going to get some damage, and then hopefully when the frosts go, depending again where you live, later in April or into May, then we can go full steam ahead into summer and have really good growth throughout the rest of the year. And then we don't have to worry about frost coming back until hopefully November, December time this year. And we've got all the summer to enjoy before that. So in this week's episode, we're just basically, I'm just here to answer any questions you have about exotic gardening, about what I garden and just generally about gardening. So you'll see, you've obviously got the normal, if you watch on YouTube, you've got the general YouTube comment section which comes underneath the video, and then you have the live chat option as well. And the live chat option is what I'm checking, so if there's any questions people have posted, I'll be seeing them on there. And if you want to ask a question, stick it in the live chat, and I will do my best to answer as many questions as possible between now and 8 o'clock. So who do we have so far this evening asking questions? Well, we've had a few questions from Monstera House. Hi Monstera House, I'll be answering your questions soon. And we've got Vincenzi Calzoni, we've got Rayed76, Asmarum, and Joe Zimmerman. So a few people asking questions already, Mint Cake and Dalza as well. So I'll be answering those questions. So let's get straight into it. So first question is from Monstera House. Are there any gardens you're hoping to visit this year? And they're suggesting the Secret Garden of Louth and Oak Barn Cottage, which are both, I believe, open under the NGS National Garden Scheme down in in Louth for the Secret Garden of Louth, and Oak Barn Cottage I think's Nottinghamshire, not a million miles away. Yeah, they're gardens I've never visited, and I'm hoping to visit at least one of those gardens this year. It's always great to visit other people's gardens, just get ideas, and also just talk about exotic plants and general gardening as well. I visited quite a few last year after my open garden day, so in September last year I saw quite a lot of people's gardens. Hopefully I'll do the same this year as well, but the build up normally when I open my garden in August, there's so much work goes into getting the garden ready that I don't often have a lot of time to see gardens before that. But then hopefully as we go through August, September, when the exotic gardens are at their best normally, hopefully I'll get to see a few gardens as well. So yeah, I'd love to see both those gardens, and I'll try to see those. I'm definitely going down to London to see a couple of gardens this year. Go to Kew Gardens, definitely doing that for the European Palm Forum Society meeting, so that'd be great to see everybody and to look at some amazing palm trees inside and outside, and that's in June. And I'll see what other gardens I get to visit whilst I'm down in London. But yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Oak Barn and the Secret Garden of Louth, so hopefully I'll get to see those as well. Next question. If you could change anything about the layout of your garden with hindsight, what would it be? This is a good question because, you know, if you want to plan a garden from scratch, I've been lucky that I had pretty much a blank canvas, and I did, I did the measurements of the garden. I planned it out on paper from, end of the house right to the bottom of the garden where everything was going to be, and I stuck to it probably about 80-90%. I changed a couple of paths and things, but pretty much I stuck to that plan, measurements and everything on that, and that took about 3 or 4 years to get everything sort of laid out. But there are changes I would make to the garden. I think one of them would be where my Jabea palm is. So I know it's a big palm and it's got a big spread, and eventually it will go up above my head height, and then I'll have to worry about the foliage. But I gave it 8-foot space, so I gave it 2.4 meters by 2.4 meters bed right in the middle of the garden, put the palm right in the center, and then I, let the palm grow, and it's been great. But because I'm pretty tall, I'm still getting the foliage sort of in my face, and what I'm having to do, especially from the open days, is chop back the foliage so that it's anything that's sort of under 6 foot tall on the leaves and that stick out more than 8 foot or 4 foot each side of the trunk. I am cutting back the foliage so it looks a bit strange, a palm, because it's not got its full potential of its leaves all the way out. I am clipping them back apart from the newest leaves that are more upright. So I think in hindsight, giving that palm probably a little bit more space, not too much, but I probably ideally give it a good sort of like 10 foot across. That'd be better, because then none of the foliage would be in anybody's way on the paths, because the leaves can spread out and they're not bigger than 5 foot each way of the trunk. So that's what I would probably do if I had to change anything. And if I had more space, I'd make wider paths. I've made very narrow paths for half the garden. First half is sort of 8 centimeters to about 1 meter and a bit across for the paths, which is pretty good. But once you go over the bridge down the garden, the paths start out at only 2 foot or 60 centimeters, so very narrow paths, but there's plenty of them to get around. And I've done that to maximise the planting space and just have minimum for literally getting round. And then further down the garden again, it does widen out, I think, to sort of 70-80 centimeters for the paths, which is a bit better. But that middle section is very tight when you go around the arid beds and the Jabea. So if I had more space, I would make them wider. And I might, if I was starting again, I'd probably change it out a little bit just to get round the Jabea palm, because it is really big. I shouldn't really be cutting the leaves back like I am, but I'm just having to just to get past the palm. So that's probably what I would change. And I'm just checking the questions still coming through. That is great, and they are. So let's carry on with the questions. If I had to move house and you could only take one plant, which would it be? That's a good question. I mean, probably the plant I should take would be the Trachycarpus orophyllus, because it's so rare and it's doing so well in the garden, and future owners might not want the palm in the garden and might get rid of it. And because it's so rare, I think it's one that I should look after, and if I moved house I should take. So probably I would take that one, even though the one that gives me the most sort of pleasure sort of watching it grow is the Jabea in the centre and my onset Haniba bananas, because they grow so quick, so big, and they're easy to look after and they're so impressive in the garden, especially in summer and autumn. So it'd be a toss up between the Jabea, if I could get it out. It is pretty big now. The onset Hanibas and the orophyllus, because of its rarity. But there's loads of other plants. I mean, I grow hundreds of different plants, but some are easier to move than others. Some get really big, and some just don't like moving. I'd have no chance of moving my eucalyptus trees, for instance. But some plants are very happily moved about, and I move, that grasses and things are very easy to move about. Okay, next question is, what plant would you never allow in your garden? What plant wouldn't I like? Well, I wouldn't want anything that's sort of spreads really vigorously and doesn't have any good sort of flowers or foliage. So, you know, I don't want things like Himalayan balsam, and I don't want things like Japanese knotweed, obviously. That would be awful if that got in the garden. And a sort of a garden plant that I wouldn't plant would probably be the very vigorous bamboos. So I would never grow sasa bamboos. I mean, I grow quite a lot of spreading bamboos, the Phyllostachys bamboos, down the bottom of the garden and the middle part of the garden, which a lot of people are scared of growing. But I'm happily growing those, but I wouldn't plant a sasa or even a pseudosasa because they spread so quickly and so sort of vigorously everywhere. They're just an absolute pain to get rid of. I've seen them getting towards rivers and watercourses and getting out of hand in people's gardens. So I wouldn't even buy a house next to somebody who had a sasa bamboo. They're just a menace. They just spread so quickly and they're so hard to control once they're really established. So that's probably a plant I wouldn't have in my garden. Roses are quality streets? Neither really. I like roses the best out of those two, but I'm vegan now, so I don't have any of the nice normal chocolates anymore. Let's have a look what else we got. So Mintcake asked a question about hibiscus. Hibiscus, I don't grow hibiscus. There's a tropical hibiscus and then there's a thoroughly hardy hibiscus. So two completely different plants in terms of hardiness. I think both come from China, some from the sort of warmer tropical areas of China and some from the temperate areas. So the ones from the temperate areas are bone hardy. You can grow them all over the UK, so you'll have no problem in the northwest. Whereas the tropical ones, you know, you really want to keep them frost free. Again, I don't have any experience growing either of those really, so I can't give you much guidance on those. I know they've got beautiful sort of blousy flowers. They can work well in tropical gardens and they work well in cottage gardens because they look very much like mallow flowers, which are very, you know, typical cottage plants. You can get them in all colours. You sort of see them in sort of pinks and purples quite often, but then you get the vibrant orange ones and the red ones as well, which can look really tropical because some of them are true tropical plants. But they are, like I said, very variable, and you get the very hardy ones as well. So I think if you do some good searches, you'll see that some loads of nice hardy ones for all the UK as well. I know we tried to grow plants on the edge and grow plants that sort of half hardy and tender and see if we can get away with them, and we think they're better for the garden because it's more interesting. Well, yes, it is. You know, we do like to have the challenge of growing these plants, but you can very easily get plants that are hardy that look exotic and look tropical. You know, things like the fatsia that we grow because it looks really tropical, but it's a hardy plant, but we all pretty much grow it in our exotic looking gardens. With a hibiscus, I'll probably go for a hardy one to see how that goes, see if you like it, and then maybe try the more tender types afterwards. Okay, next question is from Vincenzi Calzone, and the question is, what is my favourite palm tree? Any palm in the world, regardless of the climate, what would it be? That's a good question. I like most palm trees, you know, for the stature and the tropical look of the leaves and the trunks. I think a palm tree that's hard to beat really is probably the Bismarckia palm with its absolutely amazing silver fan-shaped leaves, 3D fan-shaped leaves, stunning blue silver foliage. Unfortunately, you know, you can buy them in the UK and Europe and North America, but unless you've got loads of heat, they don't grow very well, and they won't survive UK winters outside at all. And they even struggle, to be honest, inside in winter because they need a lot of light as well. People do get them to get through winter in the UK by bringing them indoors, but they're not sort of thriving, they're just sort of surviving. So it's not a plant I would ever try in this country, but I've seen them abroad and they're absolutely amazing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google busy palm or Bismarckia. It's absolutely stunning, beautiful, and they get really big, and you'll see some photographs when you Google it. They don't even look real, they look so sort of stunning with the foliage. It's so vivid, strong, silvery blue. They're incredible palms. So yeah, or a lipstick palm might be another one to try with its red stems. It looks sort of unlike any other sort of palm, but again, you can get these in the UK sometimes. You can grow it from seed. Again, it needs sort of warm tropical conditions, so they're quite hard, they're very fussy palms to keep going in the UK, especially as we get to winter where the light levels drop. And again, it's an indoor palm in the UK. Okay, so next question we have is Bromeliads from seed. So Bromeliads, you can grow them from seed, obviously, and cuttings. I've grown them from cuttings many times. I've grown them from tiny seedlings. I've never, I don't think, germinated Bromeliad seeds myself. I don't think I've germinated Datura seeds, which are very similar plants. But not Bromeliad seeds. I think you need fresh seeds. There's lots of plants that you can grow from seed that you don't need super fresh seeds. They can be dry stored for a year or two, whereas certain plants, I think Bromeliads fall in this category where you need sort of fresh seeds from to germinate well, and they are pretty small seeds as well, I believe. So you need to go for fresh seeds, a nice warm propagator, and don't put too much compost over them. Sort of surface sow really, and put a bit of vermiculite over the top, and keep them sort of nice, even, warm temperature. And they should germinate well if they're fresh seeds. And they grow quickly. And if you can't get them to grow from seed, then you can buy them as plants. In the UK, pretty much every year, discount supermarkets like Lidl and Aldi sell them every single year for pretty cheap. They've been like £1.99 or £2.99 for the last sort of 5-10 years every spring, and you get them. You're not certain what colour you'll get. You get 3 or 4 different colours they normally sell, and they're cheap, and then you can propagate your own from those plants or from garden centres. They normally do 2 or 3 types as well, but yeah, they're easy to propagate, really easy from sort of stem cuttings. And propagate them in water or in a hydropod, or just in compost as well, on a heat mat, something like that, and they do root very nicely indeed. Let's see what else we've got. Got a few more questions coming through. So next question is from Asmarom, and it's about Musa Laciocarpa, which is a banana which is sort of a bit like a musa and a bit like an onset, sort of in between really, and it's like a clumping banana with like yellow flowers, or sometimes orange or red flowers in rare types, but generally big yellow flowers and sort of glaucous leaves. And the question is, had the Musa Laciocarpa for 3 years in a container. I've put it out this year and think it's a bit too early. It's shown no sign of life. Do you think it might be dead? I found with Laciocarpa that they're pretty hardy-ish. They can get down to freezing and a bit below. Obviously, you want to bring them in before they get frost, ideally. But if they go dormant in winter, they can take a while sort of to wake up and get going. Musa baju's much quicker. Onset, to be honest, is much quicker as well. But Laciocarpa, for me, every time I've had it over winter and let it go dormant, it's just taken for absolutely ages to wake up. I think it needs constant heat day and night to sort of start into growth. So I wouldn't give up on it yet at all. I've grown them and kept them going as houseplants, and they've flowered in winter, and that was great to sort of slowly grew through winter. And I've had them, like I said, go dormant in winter, and then they've come back, but I think it's sort of like well into May before they've sort of done a first full leaf here, when I've sort of put them out after being in the greenhouse over winter. I've got one in the greenhouse right now, and it's just unfurling its first leaf, and that is on that's actually on a heat bed as well, so that's got bottom heat, and it's in the greenhouse, which keeps at least 10 degrees, and it's just now unfurling its first leaf. So I think it needs some decent light as well, which is finally starting to get. So I won't give up on it yet. Like I said, people have got away with down to -3, -4 on these, and some people leave them out in the ground and mulch them, and they come back year after year in sort of more southern counties than where I live. So, you know, I won't give up on it yet. Give it till, to be honest, I give it till June when we've got constant warmth. Because even in May, you know, it still can be cold at night. Even if we have beautiful 20-degree days, it can get down to easy 5-6 degrees at night. So when you get temperatures, you know, keeping at 10 or above, which is normally June, July, that's when it should be into proper growth by then, and sort of starting into growth a bit before that. So don't give up on it and see how it goes for the next month or two. Okay, next question is from Joe Zimmerman. I'm thinking of getting a Brighter Marta. What size would I go for? I've heard they're very slow, but also that they don't do well if grown in pots too long, so not sure. So I would generally for these don't go for seedlings if you've got a bit more money to spend. Go for a plant with a decent sized trunk if you can get it. I wouldn't go for a massive old plant that's been sitting about for ages that hasn't sold in a nursery, because when you get a really massive old palm, well, it looks old, it might not be that old, but you know, one that's got a substantial trunk, they can take a while to get going in your own garden. So you might be waiting 3-4 years for it to really get into growth and acclimatise to your garden conditions. So I would go for something in between. So go for a trunk if you can get one, sort of, you know, so you can't get your hand around the trunk basically. So it's big, you know, big enough trunk that you can't get your hands around, but not something that's in a huge, massive pot that's probably costing over £1,000 anyway, because they're hard to get these palms in any big size, to be honest, in recent years. So yeah, I'll go for something sort of at least sort of 10 litres, 10 to 30 litres, something like that. I wouldn't go for something in a huge pot, and I wouldn't go for anything less than 3 litres or 5 litres. So 10 litres, I think mine was in a 10-litre pot when I got mine, and that was well over, well, that's 10 years ago now. Now it's got a decent sized trunk at the base, but it's still not got a full-on proper trunk that's like, you know, going vertically. It's still bulking up and getting wider and wider, even after well, it's been in the ground now for about 6-7 years, and it's very happy in the ground. It pushes out between 5 and 10 leaves, so it actually grows a lot of leaves every year, and it's started into growth already. We've already had a leaf out. It grows pretty much, doesn't grow as quick as Trachycarpus fortunei, but it seems to push out leaves all year round, even in winter, just extremely slowly in winter. It does grow, you know, as soon as it gets to temperatures like we're getting at the moment, it will start motoring, get the first full leaf out in April pretty much every year. So yeah, go for as big as you can afford without being a huge old specimen that's been lying in the back of a nursery for years, unless you get a really good deal. And then be careful of the roots. You do not want to start breaking up the roots of a Brighter Marta. So when you get out of the pot, literally get it out and don't start either pulling or teasing any roots or cutting through the roots. Literally get it, plant it, and don't mess about with the roots, because if you cut too many roots, they die back. So the roots that you cut will literally die back to the base of the palm, and then it will have to regrow new roots from the base of the palm, and that can take a long time. And in worst case scenario, you can kill a Brighter Marta by cutting through too many roots and disturbing it too much. And it might take a long time to realise you've done this in a huge plant, because it'll have energy reserves in the base of the plant to keep it looking good for 3, 4, 5 years even. But you might have actually killed it when you planted it in the past. So don't cut through the roots of a Brighter Marta. Hi and Clark, thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying the question and answers so far. If you've got any questions, throw them in the chat. Next question, do I grow any exotic fruit plants or trees? I probably do, but I don't get fruit on them because of where they're planted or because of my locations. I do have a loquat tree, which I'd class as tropical fruits, even though it's a hardy tree, to be honest. But you need really warm, long, hot summers to get them to fruit. And mine's flowered, but it's not in a position where it's going to do well for fruiting, even in long, hot summers, because I'm growing it in pretty much shade. I'm growing it in shade because I'm not bothered about the fruits and flowers. I'm growing it for the foliage. and you have deeper, darker, and more importantly bigger leaves if you grow your loquat in shade. So to me it looks more exotic and tropical because they've got big single leaves on them, and they're evergreen as well, so that's why I grow it in the shade. If you grow it in the sun, it still grows really well and you've got more chance of it flowering and fruiting. I'm growing it for the leaves. I grow, what else? I grow my chocolate vine. Again, that's a hardy plant, but it has beautiful flowers which are just starting to emerge now and smell really nice like vanilla and a bit like chocolate as well. And the fruits on the chocolate vine are, well, they're unusual to say the least. They're bright purpley blue and they hang down like big bunches of sort of like purple sausages basically, and then they open up a bit like passion fruits and you eat the pulp around the seeds, which tastes absolutely gorgeous, but the seeds are just full of seeds, so you can't really enjoy eating it because you just sort of get mouthfuls of seed all the time, but the flesh around the seeds just tastes absolutely gorgeous. I think I do have the type of guava, the hardy guava, but again I've only got one plant and I think you need 2 plants to get it to fruit, so that's not looking good for me at the moment. But it's a nice evergreen bush that I grow down the bottom of the garden, which I've probably not shown in my videos because it's sort of a bit nondescript, but it does sort of hide the fence a bit, and if I had another plant and a nice long hot summer then you would get some beautiful fruit on that. Annuals obviously I grow as well, so cucumbers, tomatoes and all that sort of thing, like a lot of gardeners grow, which are exotic because, well, they're tropical at least because they're very, very tender plants. Let's have a look. Hi Stephen, your question is about gingers. So how easy are hardy gingers to grow from seed and best method? I've tried from the past few years with no germination. Any advice would be great. So not all hardy gingers will come true from seed and even have viable seeds. Sometimes you'll just get little seeds, well, like pseudo seeds, are not true fertilized seeds, and they won't actually sprout whatever you do, whatever method you use. So you need to get one that's obviously been pollinated well, has a seed in the tiny little fruits, and once you've got that seed, you want to sow it fresh ideally. Like I mentioned earlier, you want fresh seeds for gingers to get good germination rates. And then decent light, so don't really cover them, keep them moist and keep them about sort of 20 degrees and they should germinate pretty quickly. Well, really quickly to be honest if they're fresh. But again, yeah, you need viable seeds to start with. It's a bit like well, other plants that you think have grown seeds but they haven't. So sometimes you can get cannas, and you got like the like Tropicana series, which looks like the set-in seed, but they'll never germinate because they're not fertilized seeds. They're just sort of like the shells of seeds with no actual embryo inside. And it's the same with some gingers as well. You think you've got seeds, but they're just a variety that's normally propagated vegetatively by offsets and division rather than seeds. So make sure it is a type that is got viable seeds, and then yeah, 20 degrees, moist and not much compost on the top, and ideally surface sow, and then keep it in good light. And good luck with germination of your gingers. Okay, so next question is from Derek's Cheshire Palm Garden UK. Hi Derek, hope you're doing well. You're in the process of buying a Jubaeopsis. My question is, how hardy do you think it is, and do you think it'll be okay planted out if I protected it during the winter? Now, I would probably say it's not hardy where we live. I'm saying that because I know it's a pretty rare palm, but I don't know anybody who has one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Put in the comments below right now if you know somebody who's got a Jubaeopsis planted out in the UK and growing well, because I don't know of anybody that is. So I can't give any advice on that. It's not a palm I've grown. I don't know much about it, to be honest. So yeah, you need to report back to us when you buy this and see how it goes in your garden. But I'm guessing because it's not a plant we really know much about generally in UK gardens, that it's probably not hardy. But we'll leave that for another day. Let's see if it is. So you'll have to report back, Derek, if you find that you can grow this palm well in the northwest of the UK. Okay, next question. Palming Exotic UK, hi there. Do I have any major plans for this year? Okay, so I do have plans for future years. This year, so my plan will be to, well, a couple of things. I've got a full bed at the bottom of the garden on the right hand side where about 3 years ago my huge Trachycarpus gigantea bamboo flowered itself to death and set seed all over that part of the garden. So I've got a big area which is the dying roots of that bamboo, which covered a big area, and I've got loads and loads of seedlings as well that's covered the beds around that area. So my plan this year will be to dig up all the seedlings, because they're 2 or 3 years old now. They do have deep roots, which is unusual for bamboos, so we'll see how deep they go on these 2 or 3 year old specimens. I'm going to pot them up. I'm going to keep a few because it's been grown from seed. There should be some variation, so we should see some that will grow like the parent plant, and we should see some that grow either shorter or taller or have some sort of other slight variation compared to the parent plant. So I'll keep a few that look a bit different from each other, and the rest of them I'll sell on my open days in August. So if you're looking for a pretty rare bamboo Trachycarpus, it is a clump forming one, but I'll say this carefully, it's clump forming but it's huge, so it will grow a huge clump. So it's a bamboo that will grow very, very tall generally, and it will get wide. You need a big space for it to grow well and not overtake your garden. That's why I grew it at the bottom of my garden. So I will sell them this summer, and I'll keep a few, and then once I've dug them up, I've got that bed to grow some different plants in. So we're growing some sort of shady plants in that area, but it's getting a bit shady down that bottom right hand corner now, so I'll be doing that this year. And then another bed sort of after my Jabea, so with a very open sunny area where I've got my arid beds. I've got some triangle shaped beds that got loads of Colocasia pink chinas in, and I've got one of these triangles with masses of Colocasia pink china. It's got a Mediterranean fan palm, and it's got a Cycas revoluta in it, and some other bits and pieces, Melianthus and things like that, and Euphorbia. I think I'm gonna clear that bed of all the pink china. So there's probably, well, I'll find out when I dig them all up, but I'm guessing there might be 1,000 plants of pink china, individual plants, because it's just millions of them just all scattered about. I'm going to remove all those, and that's going to be a bit more low maintenance bed, because I've got my water system going great in the summer, but I want to just make that bed, because the other plants are very drought tolerant. The Cycas and the fan palm Melianthus are pretty much drought tolerant, because they've got the sort of the silvery leaves and the hard leaves in terms of the Cycas revoluta. Although it does like some nice soaking as well, but it can cope with drought for periods. I'm going to get rid of the Colocasias and grow some more drought tolerant plants in that area, a bit more low maintenance in that corner, because it gets maximum sun, and I want to sort of maximise the sun loving plants in that area. And then the Colocasias, I'll sell them on the open days as well, so there'll be hopefully hundreds of those available this year, because I run out really quickly last year. And then like I said, it'll be it won't be a true arid bed. It'll be more Mediterranean style planting in that area. So I'll be changing that this year. And then in future years, ideally, I want to get to a stage where I can change my wood chip paths just beyond the deck, go into the first part of the garden to have a nice sort of patio areas and things. And at the bottom of the garden, I want a big sort of jungle cabin where I can do my videos in, but it'd be a nice area to sit at the bottom of the garden as well. I've kept that pretty much clear. If you have been to my garden, you'll know I've got climbing frame and swings and stuff down the bottom for the children. And the idea will be when they're finished using that, I can build a big cabin. It's a good, I've got about 5 by 4 meters to play with before I hit the eucalyptus and the bamboos and things. So it's a nice big space for a nice cabin, which would be good down there, a long way from the house and overlooking the fields as well. That is my plan in a few years' time. Let's see what else we've got. Okay, another question from Joe Zimmerman, and this is about lotus. So this is basically the sort of like a tropical water lily type of plant. So you need warm water to grow it in, or very long warm growing season outdoors and bring it in. It's not something I've grown. I've seen a few people grow it, especially in Central Europe, that have got the really warm hot summers and been able to keep it alive over winter as well by bringing it in. Beautiful, stunning flowers. I think for me it's probably a lot of work and it might not be successful when I've got so many other plants to look after over winter. It's not something I've grown. Beautiful plant though. The ones I've seen are sort of like, I think they're sort of pink flowers, very unusual flowers. So that's an unusual sort of like water lily type of plant to try. Okay, next question from Fraser Mellis, and this is what is the best time to remove Musa pups from the main parent plant? I would say inactive growth. I wouldn't touch it in winter. I wouldn't touch it going into autumn into winter, and I wouldn't touch it really now until we get proper growth. So I would wait until May, and then May and June. You can do it in July and August as well, but you've got to keep on top of the watering. So it can take, it can be a bit harder to keep them going, keep them well watered that time of year, because they'll be trying to grow big leaves and they won't have many roots when you divide them. Because when you get the pups, you've got to be really careful. You'll often find, you'll think you've got a big stem coming out, it's a little distance away from the main stem, and you think, put a spade in or a knife, cut that away and you'll be fine. But if you don't move away the soil from the base, what you'll quite often do is just cut through the stem and you've got no roots whatsoever, and that stem will do nothing. It will just die away, even if it's a huge, metre, 2 metres tall stem. If you've not got any roots, you can't regrow them from the stem. You need to get a bit of the rhizome or rooting area for it to actually to regrow more roots. So move away all the soil or compost away from the base, and then make sure you get some of that mother plant, the main stem, basal plate in that, or its own roots as well from the rhizome of the stem you're trying to divide the offset. So be careful when you are separating them. And I did it last year in June for my Musa Baju from the front garden. I separated it and put it in the back garden. They sulked for a long time, to be honest. It wasn't until well into August that they were looking happy again. You think it's nice and warm, they'll grow well, but because I didn't get too much root with it, and they were trying to grow big leaves because it was warm and sunny, then they sort of sulked for a while, and then once the roots were rooted into the ground, then they were happy, and they've come through this winter unscathed, thankfully. It did take a little while, so make sure you get roots when you do separate them. You can, like I said, you can if you really want to do it in autumn and winter, if you're sort of doing it and bring it indoors, but I wouldn't divide a plant in sort of autumn and winter outside, move it about outside, because you want that rooting process to really get established before winter, before it goes dormant again. Okay, next question is from Liam Payne. Hi Liam. My Musa Valentina has all died over winter. I didn't overwinter it correctly. Will it come back this spring? It still seems solid at the base, thanks. Probably not. Obviously I need to know more about the conditions you keep it in over winter, but this isn't a hardy type of Musa. It is tender, so you need to keep it indoors, well above frost free, ideally above 10 degrees, and in active growth through winter really. It can go a bit dormant-ish, but not really below 10 degrees. It might seem solid at the base, so you might got some life in it if it you didn't actually get it really cold over winter, but it could still be solid and just not rotted away, and it might slowly rot away when it warms up. or it might have some life, and it's really hard to see without any photographs or more information. But it is a tender plant, so if it looks dead and you've kept it warm for the last few weeks and it's not showing any signs of life, then unfortunately it might be dead. Okay, next question. Paul Nixon, what got into tropical plants? So I mentioned this before, but for those that don't know, I grew all sorts of plants for all my life. Started with fruit and veg when I was very young, like literally 4 or 5. I've grown fruit and veg every year, and I moved into tropical plants sort of when I got my own garden in 2004, I think it was, or 2005 when I got my own garden. Then I started with tropical plants, so I grew basically. I went to Wilkinson's that spring, and they had loads of tropical bulbs. They had elephant ears, they had the Colocasias you could buy from there, giant ones, like mammoth I think it was, and they had loads of obviously dahlias and things like that. And I just picked one of everything, put them in the garden, and everything grew. And also there was musabaju from my local garden centre that first year, and I got that, and I've grown that same plant, or the pups of that plant, since then. So it's been, what's that, 17 years I've been growing those. So they are great. Not 15 years, 16 years, can't count. So I've been growing tropical plants for a long time, and gardening now for 35 years. As I'm coming up to, I'll be 40 soon. So yeah, I've been gardening for quite a long time. Okay, next question from Keith Harris. Hi Keith. About Trachycarpus. Last summer my new fronds were stunted, had brownish mould on them. I noticed red mites too. I treated it. Any thoughts? So Trachycarpus fortunei and Gunnera, the hardy fan palms that we grow all over sort of Europe, but Northern Europe and the UK, they are pretty much bulletproof once they're happy in your garden. So once they've got the roots down, they will survive, even pretty bad winters. And they don't need lots of heat to grow well. They need a decent amount of water. They don't want to be too hot for too long with too humidity. So they're not a palm you could grow in Florida very well, but you can grow lots of other types of palms in Florida. But in the UK, they grow well. So you say you've got an issue with stunted foliage. This could be depending on when you planted it. Did you mention that in your question? Last summer my new fronds were stunted. So I don't know when you planted it. It could be that it's just suffering from shock of being moved, or it wasn't growing well in a pot before you planted it out in the last 2 or 3 years. It can take, depending on how it's been transplanted, it can take 3 or 4 years for it to be in full growth again if it had a bad transplant. Normally we say a year or 2 and it should be growing well, but it depends if it was dug up from somebody else's garden and then brought to your garden and not watered well in its first year. It can sort of suffer. So it's like any sort of plants, any trees. Once you plant it in the ground, you've got to water it through the first year really well. So especially in spring and summer and into autumn, where it can be dry and you can get weeks without any proper rain, you need to water it really well in its first year. Once you've got through the first year or so, the roots will have got into the ground and it will find its own water, and you don't really need to water it again. It could be something to do with that. It could be the opposite. It could be where you've planted it, it's sort of in a sump. It could be some really sort of waterlogged ground, and it might be that it's sort of suffering from sitting in waterlogged conditions and the roots rotting under there. It's hard to say without seeing the pictures and knowing the growing conditions exactly. And you get mould basically on dying and dead leaves as well, so that's that. The red mites, I don't think will be anything to do with why it's looking bad, unless, we talk about red spider mite, but red spider mite is generally not actually red. It's normally sort of clear to little brown. It's very rarely that red, and they're very small, and they don't affect outdoor plants very often on hardy sort of tough plants like Trachycarpus fortunei, unless it had them when it was grown indoors and brought outside. But generally speaking, once it's gone through a winter, it kills off any red spider mites anyway, because they don't like it frosty. They won't survive frosty conditions. So you normally get it indoors in greenhouses. So it's probably not that affecting it. It's probably, like I said, something wrong with the roots, I would say. either been too dry or they've been too wet for too long. They can cover a lot of water, you know, damp conditions are fine, but if they're literally sitting in water, then they won't be happy. But it's hard to say, Keith, without knowing the exact location and what's been going on with that plant. So Joe Zimmerman again, hi Joe, thanks for the questions this evening, asking about other Colocasias that are hardy other than pink china. There are a few you can try that are hardy-ish but not thoroughly hardy. So the general mammoth and Jack's giant can get through winters. Dark stem hybrid Fontensii can get through winters, but they're not reliably hardy. They normally, you know, get through mild ones if it's been well drained, but they don't grow quickly again the next year to make a good sized plant in my garden. So in America, they do keep most of the Colocasias out, even in really cold winters if they've mulched heavily. Because they have proper heat, like 30 degrees in summer for days and weeks at a time, they'll grow back well, so you can grow far more Colocasias in the ground. Although we have milder winters than most of continental Europe and America, because it's mild because we've got a maritime climate. We don't have that intense summer heat normally to get them into growth well enough. But pink china is one of the exceptions. It doesn't need too much heat to get going again, and it's reasonably hardy. There is the other one that I can never pronounce, beginning with G, that is hardy as well. They're like Gale gangosis or something like that. So that is hardy as pink china. I've got a small plant that I'll be planting out this spring in the garden, and hopefully it will bulk up over the next few years, and it will compete with the pink china for a nice hardy Colocasia. And the Gualgansis, I've not got it spelt in front of me. One beginning with G, look it up. It's got sort of like dark shades, like patches of blacky brown on the leaves, so it does look different from pink china. So it's a nice contrasting Colocasia to try that is hardy in the UK. So that's the other one. But other people have tried other ones, like I mentioned. Mammoth and Jack's giant will get through some winters, but not every winter if it's especially wet or cold. John Watts asked about Trachycarpus. We talked about that much earlier in the hour. So yeah, Trachycarpus, I like to grow it as a pot plant, to be honest. It's not a big banana, it'll never grow huge, so I don't see the point of planting it out. Grow it in a pot, you can bring it in over winter, so you're not having to worry about protecting it outside. It doesn't take up much space, and you get them to flower after, I don't know, 2 to 4 years. They will flower. They are monocarpic, so they will die after flowering, but they have loads of offsets that you can divide and grow on as well. The flowers are stunning, and I did a time-lapse movie of them flowering as well, which you might want to check out. All the petals unfurling over several weeks. It's a beautiful large flower that lasts for absolutely ages. Do you grow any palms from seeds? So yeah, I have done in the past. The one I keep trying with is Juania australis. So I've got some more seeds on the go of that in moss, and that they are not germinating yet. Put them in, I think, November, December time. They've not gone mushy, they've not gone mouldy, they're still firm and hard. So I'm giving it more time to see if they germinate. I had them germinate before, but they're really tricky once you get them to germinate to keep them alive for too long. I think I had one do okay and then die at the first leaf stage. So I want to try to get them to grow. I've grown loads of Trachycarpus fortunii, I've grown Washingtonias from seed. I've tried Butias and Jabeas before, but they didn't germinate for me, and I found that they are very slow from seed, and I bought plants rather than trying those types from seed again. But definitely washes are easy to grow. Dates are very, very easy to grow from fresh seeds, and I've grown them a few times. But if you've got something really rare and you want to try it, then seeds are the best way to go, because it's easy to find it from seed in the first place. And you get a bunch of seeds, and as long as you've got patience, you should see some germinate, but they can take years. Some people have tried to grow palms from seeds, grown it in moss or in a Ziploc bag and given it ideal conditions they've read about and they've not germinated. They've thrown them outside in the summer and then they've found that they've germinated just outside on the ground. So don't give up. Sometimes it can take a year or two to germinate as well. What else we got? So Nigel Phillips asks, are there any plants you're hoping to try for the first time this year? Yes, there are quite a few this year. Last year I hardly grew anything new, sort of looking after the plants I had. But this year I'm growing a type of sort of daisy-like flower, but it's the foliage I'm after. It's got several names. The one I'm going to use in this video, because I remember it, is Rolanda. I think it's Senecio as well, and it's basically got very interesting furry leaves with sort of like scalloped edges. I did a picture of it on Instagram and Facebook yesterday, if you want to check that out. It should be hardy as well, so I'm going to be planting that out in spring and sort of treating it a bit like sort of Amesia and sort of Tetrapanax, in terms of it will die back in winter and it'll come from the roots each spring, and that's a plan anyway. I got it as a cutting last year, and hopefully it will do well, and it looks really unusual. You can get a red form as well, but the green form I believe should be pretty hardy, so that'll be one I'm trying for the first time. And I'll also be growing, different varieties of things like zinnias for the first time, but I'll be growing Perella, I think it's called Perella, from seed, which is like a red edible, it's a herb, but it has sort of really dark foliage, so that'll be like really nice contrast to grow. It looks tropical-ish, and it'll be good contrast with like yellow and green and red flowering plants and leaves. So I'll be growing that from seed. I literally just put the seed in last night, so I sowed a load of seeds last night. I sowed all my zinnias, I sowed all my ricinus now into April. I sowed, what else did I sow? Like I said, about 5 or 6 types of zinnias, 2 types of ricinus, and some other things I can't quite remember now as well. Oh yeah, Tifonia seeds, my Mexican sunflowers, I sowed them as well. So all the things that grow quickly but are tender, I'm starting to grow from seed into April, into May. Let's have a look. What else have we got? We're nearly up to the hour. I like to finish within the hour, so I'll be finishing at 8 o'clock. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so we've got SFO 2K1. Hello. How much growth can you expect on my new Gunnera in its first year? It currently has 4 hand-sized leaves. So if it's a new one and you put it in the ground now, it will grow to a decent size, but it'll be mainly sort of building up its root system and getting sort of a bit of mass sort of underground and getting those buds big for next year's growth. And it also depends which Gunnera you've got, whether you've got Manicata or you've got Tinctoria. If you've got Tinctoria, you'll never get leaves more than metre and a half across, which is big. It's still a huge plant, but for the absolute massive biggest leaves you want Manicata, which can easily get well over 2 meters across on stalks at about 2 meters, 3 meters, no, might be exaggerating a bit, but at least 2.5 meters tall as well, so it can be huge. So you want Manicata for the biggest ones potentially. Both though, when you first plant it, it might get leaves about 1 meter across at the biggest in the first year, I would say. But from a small plant, obviously you might be looking at 40, 50, 60 centimeters. It's really hard to say. Give it loads of water, loads of feed if you wish as well, loads of manure and things like that, and it will grow big. If you've got Manicata, it'll grow bigger still, but Tinctoria is still a big plant, although strictly speaking it's not legal to sell Tinctoria in the UK and Europe because of its potential for being invasive in parts of Europe like Western Ireland and continental Europe as well. Okay, time for a couple more questions. Okay, so we have Vincenzi's asking again, but this one is about Juania Australis. Funny enough, you're talking about this. I have germinated Juania Australis from seed before, but I didn't get past the first leaf stage. It sort of died back. I think it's quite temperamental when it's first putting its first root and its first leaf out. So that is why I'm trying again. First time I grew them from seed, they did germinate pretty well within like a month to 6 weeks. This time it's been a few months and I've got no germination, and I've done pretty much the same thing. So hopefully they'll germinate and keep constant temperatures, I think, but not too warm. These are a bit strange for palm trees. They like cool conditions. They don't want to have hot summers, so again, continental Europe, continental America, they don't grow well, if at all, because it's too hot for them. It's said that anything over 25 degrees for many days at a time will mean the palms will go sort of dormant and sort of die back a bit potentially. They don't like hot temperatures. So the UK is great if you can get it through the winters, because we never get many weeks where it's above 25 degrees. We normally, summers, especially up in the north, we get 20 degrees is great, 25 is rare, and 30 degrees is like once a year, if at all, we get to 30 degrees. So it's great for our summers, for Juania Australis. Winters, you don't really want it below 0, but they can cope down to -5, -6, and maybe a bit lower when established as well. So hopefully we'll get some grown from seed this year, and we'll talk about the experience of growing these on throughout the UK summer. So one more question before we wrap up for the evening, and again, let's see, Diane Cox, are there any common diseases of gingers outdoors? My pot grown ones sometimes have large brown patches over the leaves and not sure why. I found all the gingers that I grow outdoors to be pretty much fuss free. They don't really get attacked by any pests or diseases. Slugs really don't go for them much. Sometimes you get moths nibbling away at them, but that's about it. And I've never had any diseases. They are related to obviously the bananas and the cannas, which do suffer quite a lot of diseases, especially the cannas, but I've not noticed any diseases on my different hedychiums in the garden, and I've been growing them for like 10-15 years, so I can't really comment on diseases. But plants become more and more commonly grown gingers, then chances are diseases will spread eventually, and we'll find that there are plants, certain gingers that will be susceptible to diseases. But at the moment I don't know of any common diseases that attack or affect hedychiums in the garden. Brown patches, yeah, I'm not seeing it, because in summer you can give them endless amounts of water and it won't do them any harm whatsoever. It can be completely, pretty much, not as a bog plant, but you can water them every day in summer and they will do well as long as it's warm. They love loads of water and loads of feed, so I wouldn't say that would be causing it to have brown patches on the leaves. So I'm not sure why you've got that, Diane, so sorry I can't help with that one. Just have to monitor it and see how it see if it affects the same plants year after year, or was it a one-off. So we have come up to the hour. Thanks for everybody for tuning in and watching and asking loads of really interesting questions. Hopefully I've answered most of them well. A lot about my personal gardening and gardening style and about me, but lots of general gardening questions there as well. If you've managed not to see this from the start, I will be doing a full video of this onto YouTube a little bit later this evening, so you can watch the full show from the beginning, or fast forward and rewind to your heart's content. So thank you for watching, and join me next week where I'll be doing more in the garden. Bye for now.